Janet Makis. I'm the pastor here at United Christian Church of Austin, and I'm very happy that you're all here. The speakers, I want to tell you, we have this wonderful cobbled together microphone. It's actually 3 microphones in one. And there are special reasons for all of these microphones, so we'll just share one microphone to make certain that everyone can hear as they need to hear. I would like you to know that we have restrooms behind us, and if you can choose which one best suits you. If for some reason we should need to leave quickly, there are exits that way, and then you can go through these doors as well to exit out there. And I would just like to open us with a blessing that was written by Sister Ruth Marlene Fox. May we be blessed with discomforted, easy answers, half-truths, and superficial relationships so that we may live deep within our hearts. May we be blessed with anger at injustice, oppression, and exploitation of people so that we may work for justice, freedom, and peace. May our hearts be filled with the courage to love and a restless spirit for what is right. As we bring our prayers and songs together, may we recognize the divine in every person, regardless of background and work, for the dignity of all. Let us be united in our commitment to equity, standing as witnesses for fairness in our communities and in our world. And may our unity empower us to act with boldness, bringing forth a new day of justice and healing. And with that, I will turn this over to you, and thank you for organizing this.
Thank you, Reverend Janet, for having us here. I'm just going to grab my intro papers. I'm so thrilled that you're all here, and thank you for spending your evening here. I think it's so cool. It's a panel of all women. I think that's awesome. Beautiful leaders. And I'm going to share the bios that I have here so you know who is sharing with you tonight. And I'll also share a little bit about the Austin Sanctuary Network. A lot of y'all are familiar faces, so you're probably pretty well aware of the work that the Sanctuary Network does. But I'll just share one of our kind of taglines and grounding mission statements, which is that we confront violent structures with bold compassion and courageous love. Some of the ways that we do that these days are through our accompaniment program, accompanying people to their immigration appointments in San Antonio, or if they have court appointments here in Austin. We have a detention visitation program where people provide moral support and friendship to people who are detained in immigrant detention. We have a resource hotline where people who are affected by detention and deportation can reach out. We have education programs educating people on their constitutional rights and the history and forces behind the immigration system. And we provide support to individuals and families who are affected by, again, detention and deportation. I want to just highlight 2 calls to action for all that energy that we're going to generate together to move out into the world and help our neighbors. So on March 31st, which is an upcoming Tuesday, it's a day off from AISD, and we're going to be bringing students and educators to the Travis County Commissioner's Court to share with our elected officials about the impacts of the current situation on children and educators who are dealing with ICE currently. And we also have a call script out on the table outside where you're able to find information for making a call in support of Mr. Eric Gonzalez, who is currently in detention and suffered a head injury during an assault. And so we're trying to rally as much support as possible to pressure the detention center to provide him with vital medical attention in this really scary moment for him. So I'm going to share a little bit about who's here tonight. Reverend Janet is the transitional pastor of the United Christian Church of Austin that is kindly hosting us tonight. She is ordained in the Christian Church Disciples of Christ and the United Church of Christ. She's been interested in social justice work since the mid-'80s when she worked with migrant farm workers in North Carolina. She's the founder of Resistance Choir ATX, which is a weekly sing that currently takes place Monday nights at Batch on Manor Road. So if you want to sing in community. Yay. Professor Judith Norman drove all the way from San Antonio in rush hour, which I can't get over. Thank you for doing that, a real act of love. She's a professor of philosophy at Trinity University, where she teaches courses mostly in the history of philosophy and helps run a prison education program. She is active in Jewish Voice for Peace and other community groups that advocate for Palestinian liberation, as well as police and prison abolition and immigration justice. Reverend Aaron Walter, Reverend Aaron Walter, I'll make a note, she's the daughter of one of our long, steadfast volunteers who's integral to Austin Sanctuary Network, Melanie. Reverend Aaron Walter serves as minister and executive director for the Texas Unitarian Universalist Justice Ministry, the Action Network for the UU denomination in Texas. She's a winner of the 2017 award for the UU Women's Federation and a former newspaper journalist. And Reverend Aaron's book, Care for the World, Reflections on Community Ministry, was published by Skinner House Books in 2022, and she lives her UU values in her advocacy, parenting, and joy practices, including music with her rock band, Parker Woodland, and doing Zumba at the YMCA. And Michelle Venegas Matula is the organizing director for the statewide Action Network Texas UU Justice Ministry, now in her third year, with over 13 years of experience that began in the grassroots movement in her own neighborhood in East Austin, pushing back on gentrification. Michelle found her calling, her spiritual calling in faith-based justice at Wildflower UU and through the international BIPOC community of DRUM, Diverse Revolutionary UU Multicultural Ministries. Her work for migrant justice and collective liberation is deeply rooted in the legacy of her Puerto Rican ancestors, whose stories of community building and struggle for freedom carry her and inform her lifelong commitment to liberation for all. And Reverend Natalie Webb is the senior pastor of University Baptist Church in Austin, Texas. She is passionate about working for justice in the community and being a compassionate pastoral presence in the lives of her congregants. She's a fierce advocate for reproductive justice, LGBTQ rights, welcoming migrants and asylum seekers, public education, and Palestinian liberation. From helping reunite families separated in Texas immigration detention under the first Trump administration, to welcoming and providing respite for pro-Palestinian protesters at the University of Texas in 2024, to visiting and partnering with churches in the West Bank last fall, Natalie empowers her churches to meet the needs of the moment and move faith into action. And Reverend Dr. Thank you. Reverend Dr. Crystal Silva McCormick is assistant professor and director of Latinx Studies at Austin Seminary. She's also an ordained minister, apparently starting here in the UCC, and organizer with Christians for a Free Palestine and with the Austin Palestine Coalition. And Reverend Carrie, will you introduce yourself? I don't have your bio, I'm so sorry.
I was on vacation. I'm Reverend Carrie Holly Hurt. I'm the assistant minister at First UU of Austin. And y'all said that there's so many good things about these people. My highest call is working for liberation.
So now, obviously, we're here just to hear your report backs from the front line and the ways that you have been concretely present with the fights for liberation in the detention centers in Texas and Minneapolis and in Palestine. And so yes. Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry.
That's okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Reverend Dr. Patricia Bonilla. I am assistant professor at Austin Seminary. I actually come from Chicago. I was doing a lot of organizing there before coming here to Austin. So partnered there with the Latino Union of Chicago, doing work with day laborers and temporary workers.
Thank you. Sorry, I'm really scatterbrained up here. I don't like being in front of people. But I'll just hand it over, I guess, and you're in the order that we'll start in. If you want to just share anything about your reflections, anything that you've borne witness to that you want to pass on here, and then we'll have time at the end. If anybody has any specific questions, or if there's something you'd like to ask, you can raise your hand and we'll run over and take questions in between as well.
I'm Janet Makis, and I would like to say when I was one of, I think 3 of us up here were at least went to Minneapolis, and just a few things that came out from that were very important to me. One was, as one woman said to me, she keeps hearing people say, "I don't know what to do. I can't do this," or I don't know about this. And what she said, and this is paraphrasing, but it was essentially that the fabric of society has come undone. Whatever your thread is, pick it up and weave it. And it doesn't matter what it is, because everything needs to be done. The other thing was to make certain that you know your neighbors. And I live in a part of town where I know I would not be surprised if someday I showed up on my street. And so I've made certain all of the people on my little street, we have a signal group together. And so we just let people know if we see something so that they don't come home. The other thing was to live with joy, and that's why I started with a friend here at the church, the Resistance Choir, ATX, where it's just a sing-along, and it's really a 1 hour a week that people can come together and learn simple songs that they could take to protests. Because over this past year, I'm sure all of you found it the same thing. There were so many people I was meeting at protests who had never been to one, and people were nervous, wondering, what do I do? And I'm like, well, you're doing it. And I just thought, if we had some simple songs that would stimulate the vagus nerve and just kind of plant people. And so we started this weekly 1 hour of joy. And so that's been a big part of my weekly routine. There's so much that I learned, but there are so many people who have so much more to say. So I'm going to pass it along.
Thank you so much. I'm so honored to be here with this group and to help address you and sort of let you know what I've seen and what I've noticed about the project of witnessing. And what I wanted to talk about wasn't so much my specific experiences traveling through Palestine and the other places where I've sort of come across institutions of occupation and violence, but what I was doing there, right? So just to think a little bit more broadly about what it means to witness, what's necessary in order for witnessing to be doing well, just some reflections I've had about that. As I said, or as I put in my bio, I work with Jewish Voice for Peace. And in 2015 and 2016, I was privileged to travel through Palestine, through the West Bank and Gaza with the Episcopal Peace Network, members of clergy from the Episcopal Peace Network. And I was the only Jewish person on that delegation, I think the only non-clergy, and I got to see what witnessing meant from a Christian perspective and compare that with what I was experiencing as a Jewish person. I'd like to talk a little bit about that. But first I wanted to mention, as you said in my bio, I'm involved with a prison teaching project in San Antonio, which isn't really a prison teaching project. It's a project of imagining what community can and should be to be radically inclusive and to treat everybody as non-disposable. What justice looks like in the absence of punishment. and to create communities that can start to practice the bodily, the somatic habits, as well as the cognitive intellectual habits of treating people with genuine equality. And we do that by combining communities with in prison. And the first time I entered a prison, we were engaged in a exercise of getting to know each other, where we sort of had two circles, and then we'd stop in front of each other, and we'd have like 20 seconds to ask each other a question. So the first time I was there, the first guy I found myself face to face with, an incarcerated scholar in our learning community, his question, which was urgent, I could read it in his face, the urgency of this question: are you scared of me? And what was I doing there in prison? I was there to help build community in which which incorporates the values of radical inclusion and equality, and nobody gets treated as disposable. And he wants to know, how do I see him? Am I scared of him? Right? And no, I wasn't. It didn't occur to me to be scared of him. And he needed to know that. He needed my face to reflect that. And so that taught me something about the role of witnessing in terms of combating one of the sort of like, I guess, philosophical or psychological sources of violence, which is the othering. When I've traveled through Palestine with the Episcopal Peace Network, we went to, as I said, the West Bank and Gaza, and I kept asking myself, what am I doing here? I'm an activist for Palestinian liberation. I know what to do in the United States. I know how to go to legislative offices. I know how to be a rally speaker. I know how to organize an educational event. What the heck am I doing there? I felt useless, right? And I felt everything I saw in the West Bank that was horrible had a Star of David on it. And that is, I'm Jewish. And what am I doing here? And I went through periods of thinking, is this a sort of disaster tourism? Am I here to gawk? Am I here to cry? What am I here to do? And I carried that question. The Episcopal folks had different answers to that question. They didn't have the sense of burning shame that I did, although perhaps they should have. And then we went to Gaza. This is in 2015 and 2016, and there had been, one of the Israeli sort of like brutal carpet bombings, and whole neighborhoods were decimated. We visited schools that were trying to work with children who had experienced massive, widespread, wall-to-wall trauma. That didn't stop. A feature of Gaza during the bombings at that time, now it's unspeakable, was there was no safe space to go. The nature of the family structure was degraded by the fact that children who would look to their parents and say, keep me safe, and the parents had no way of doing that. And children could see that the parents had no way of keeping them safe. There was no safe place to go. And so the whole fabric of child-parent relationships and the sense of trust that's needed in order to constitute a family was coming apart. And there were no therapists. We went to the Gaza mental health network. And there were no therapists that could treat what was going on, because the therapists, when hearing the stories of the folks that they were talking to, weren't just experiencing secondary trauma. They were living their primary trauma. They were cataloging new forms of psychopathic illness because their situation was unprecedented. I saw pictures. I went to sites where they were where people were trying to work with children to heal through art. Really smart ways of trying to heal. Just Nobel Prize winning, Olympic medal winning smart forms of trying to order society so as to be able to heal. with no help from the outside whatsoever. Israel was blocking, people were trying to rebuild their houses out of wood, which is not the construction material in Gaza. It was concrete, because concrete wasn't being allowed in, and Israel put wood on the "you cannot enter Gaza" list. So trying to rebuild with nothing, with negative things. And the children's art was beyond nightmare. Just sort of like ripped up dolls, sort of like doused in red paint. And our delegation stuck out like a sore thumb, right? This is not a place where people from outside of Palestine were allowed in and out. It was shut. And we were clearly not from there, and people would come to us with their stories because they had no sense that anybody outside, it wasn't just that they were shut up inside of this nightmare enclosed in a, they weren't just shut up in this nightmare, they were shut up in this nightmare and had this sense that nobody cared, that there were no voices in the outside world that would care. And so they fashioned us into bearers of witness to what was going on. I don't know what I was doing in Gaza. God help me, I was curious. I didn't know what I could do. I didn't know how I was needed. I didn't know, I'd never sort of thought about what it meant to bear witness. And here I was being asked to be the repository of these stories, and I needed to grow in order to be strong enough to be able to carry these stories with me. And it took me a while. The first time I went to a child's, into a expressive art healing center, I looked at the pictures and I crumbled under the suffering. I couldn't bear it. And then all the attention turned to me. I had a similar experience in Hebron, looking at the city and just crumbling, falling onto the sidewalk and having to be taken to a cafe. And then all the attention came on me and my distress. The Jewish woman is crying. It's like, Jesus, that's not what I need to do in order to be strong enough to carry the stories out, right? I can't reflect the suffering back. Then it becomes about me and my suffering. I have to be strong enough to be able to bear witness, and that means finding a place to put my 2 feet on the soil so that I have the strength to be able to hear the stories that are coming at me without falling onto it. And I think, I saw sort of Christian models of bearing witness. Forgive me, I'm not good at this sort of stigmata. It's sort of like, this is what Christ went through. And the impulse to sort of like reflect the suffering you're seeing on your body. And I saw that's a degraded model of bearing witness, right? I need to know myself in order to understand what position I play, what my strengths are, in order to be able to listen to what's being brought to me. I can't just I just can't look like the suffering that I'm seeing. And it's a seductive way to bear witness, to amplify the suffering. I saw people bleeding. Look, I'm bleeding too. You can see how badly things are by my screams. But I don't have the right to scream like somebody in Gaza who's lost their whole family has the right to scream. What I'm able to do is not tell the stories, because I'm not a voice. To be a witness is neither to crumble under somebody else's suffering, nor is it to be a voice for the voiceless, because people in Gaza have voices very much. Thank you very much. But to find a way to beam a light into what's going on in Gaza. So it's not about me. It's not about me using my voice to overwrite somebody else's. It's about finding a way to beam a light into Gaza so people could see what's happening to them on their own terms. And in a sense, to disappear. But to disappear is not to crumble. To disappear is to be strong. And what I found is that the way to be strong is to find community. If I'm trying to hold all this, then of course I'm going to crumble. Nobody can hold all this, but if I find community, and for me that had to be Jewish community, to help hold me while I am holding the stories, then I could be an effective bearer of the urgent information, which is look at Gaza, listen to people in Gaza. And I needed Jewish community to be able to do that. And it occurred to me, and I had a secular upbringing, that is a distinctively religious role that I was being called upon to play, and was a role that I needed to look within my own tradition to be able to play. I needed to be able to worship with people who have the same tradition in order to be able to play the role. So I didn't come to politics through religion, I came to religion through politics. And the responsibility that being in Gaza gave me to bear witness in a responsible and a sort of religiously grounded sense. Yep, and that's what I learned.
I'm Natalie. I'm the pastor at University Baptist Church. Grateful to be a sister church with you all. And I kind of found my pastoral calling in my first church in San Antonio, working with migrants through the San Antonio Sanctuary Network, which actually was kind of started and inspired by you all at the Austin Sanctuary Network. So thank you for the work that you all have done for, I guess that was over a decade ago, whenever, I forget who came from Austin Sanctuary Network to my little church in Garden Ridge and talked to us about your work. We, at that time, that church had a retreat house, and so we were able to open up our retreat house as a sanctuary church, and particularly in the summer of 2018, I believe it was, when we had the family separations happening in a really, I mean, they've been happening and they still are happening, but in a really, it was in the news all the time, and there were lots of families being separated. So I learned from you all to respond to the need at my doorstep, and my congregation was transformed by that. So thank you. I think that kind of learning and leaning into my own pastoral calling led me to my most important work here in Austin, which started at the pro-Palestinian protest at the University of Texas. My congregation is right across the street. And when students were being brutalized by police and tear gassed literally across the street from my church, we were able to open our doors and become a respite center and lost and found, and just have learned so much from community organizers here and from students at the University of Texas these last couple of years, and been able to continue that work. I think that work drew me deeper into Palestinian liberation work and sent me to the West Bank last fall. So, I mean, I think what I learned there's too much to tell you everything. But one thing that stuck with me was Reverend Munther Isaac's words that what is happening in Gaza is happening in the West Bank too, just in slow motion. And so seeing the confinement of communities, the gates that can cut people off from each other at a moment's notice, in person and up close, and being seeing the restriction of resources, from small businesses to water restrictions to, all kinds of things. And then seeing the settler attacks that were protected by the IDF, one that happened to a member of the church we visited like the week after we left in Taipei. And just seeing the way that students, children, and all people are targeted, particularly, there are no lines on who is targeted. And so when I say the Christian community is targeted, I don't mean that in like more targeted than others, but they are certainly targeted in a specific way because they are a problem for Zionism. The fact that there are indigenous Christians that are Palestinian who have been there and are the descendants of the earliest Christians, the earliest folks of our faith, is a problem for the Christian Zionist movement, which is the main problem, right, if we're honest. So I want you to know that what everyone that we spoke to Greek Orthodox and Catholic and Lutheran and all kinds of different clergy members in my Christian faith, is that there's no difference. They're all Palestinian. And so the struggle for liberation is there. It's not like a third group that's on the ground there. They're Palestinian and they're suffering. So I think an easy way to get our churches engaged with this, even if maybe I know this can be a difficult conversation, is to connect with churches in the West Bank and to make sure that your friends and family and folks know that your siblings are there and are Palestinian and are suffering. Another thing that Pastor Munther said when we went to church and stayed and he talked to us for a little while was he had just moved to Ramallah. He was in Bethlehem before, and he said before he moved to pastor this little church in Ramallah, he had an opportunity to go into advocacy work full time, and he decided to turn it down because he said the real work is here, and it's in a room about this big, built by Palestinian refugees who were displaced from somewhere else. The real work is here. Caring for the people who are here is the work of God. And I just appreciated that so much as a pastor who also is involved in advocacy work, just to say, like, yeah, if he can do that there, I can do that where I am. And so it was a big encouragement to me. Caring for each other and caring for foreigners, which turned out on my trip to be me. I ended up with a health crisis. I had a late-term pregnancy loss while I was in the West Bank. And and received just the most beautiful sense of community and care from folks in the church and in the public hospital and in the hotel that we were staying at. I want to bear witness to the hospitality that I received, even in a hospital where I did not speak the language and all I had to show them was my American passport, which, I mean, can you imagine? Like, I'm like, they're gonna kill me, like, and they should, right? But no, I was able to receive the care that I needed that I have to say I don't know if I could have received in Texas, because what I needed, even though the baby was delivered, was D&C, and that is a really contested procedure here. But they saved my life, regardless of where I was from. So I just think it's such. I don't think that I know what to do to like help those communities, but I feel like there's so much to learn about how to be community from the folks that I met there. And I think that in my little bit of grief and suffering, the ways that they surrounded me with so much grief and suffering was just really life-changing and transformative for me. And I do think that our shared suffering is an important part of our witness, not to create suffering for ourselves and make ourselves kind of the center. Obviously, my suffering was so small compared to, it doesn't compare. But I think that part of me is always there now, and I feel and have been empowered by Pastor Munther and others on the ground I feel like I've been adopted, and I could say much more, but I won't because I want to get this to the rest of you. But I think the other thing I want to say is even if your suffering is not like having a miscarriage in Palestine, our suffering here is not separate from their suffering there. Our suffering is all connected. And what we're seeing here, particularly with immigrants and migrants, is incredibly connected. I think that Christian nationalism that is racist and xenophobic and supremacist and is treating our migrant siblings with so much disdain and causing so much suffering is just one side of a double-sided coin. The other side is Christian Zionism, or maybe Zionism, but I'll speak from my own tradition. These things are not disconnected. They come from the same place of racism and of supremacy and of empire, to be honest. And so what's happening there is not disconnected from what's happening here, and we can't just address our issues here while, the bleeding on the other side of the world is not being stopped. So I think I'll just say, I don't know who you all are, if you're like in churches or if you're pastors or what your lives are like. But one thing that we can do is like speak out against Christian nationalism and Christian Zionism. I think it was maybe one of your events, Crystal, where somebody said there are more Christian Zionists than there are Jews in Israel, right? Like, or maybe anywhere, I don't know. So this is our issue. This isn't something that we like get to sit out as followers of Jesus, for those of you who are. And there are connections beyond just those kind of philosophical, theoretical connections, like the same techniques that are being used in Minnesota. I got to go and be there for their Day of Truth and Action with one of my pastor friends who pastors in Minneapolis. It's the same techniques that have been tested and tried and proven in the West Bank and in Gaza for so long. The same kinds of surveillance systems, the same kinds of targeting of students and children and baiting folks. But one thing that I learned in Minnesota, I will say, is that it felt so different than Texas, because I don't know if those of you that were there would agree, but there was just a sense that like the community was all in it together, and like even the local government. And when we did a sit-in at the, some bank headquarters, the security guards are like, come on in, yeah, have a seat, So I think that is a testament to local action. Like I'm, definitely vote in the presidential elections, but if we can get some change happening in our local government, like that is where the actual work needs to happen, that we actually can make a difference and change the culture of our communities to be able to do what they've done in Minneapolis, which is so incredible. So local organizing. I have more notes, but I'm going to stop there and pass it to Crystal because you guys need to talk. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. It is definitely an honor to be here with you all as we reflect together about the times that we're in. I think it's an invitation, and I want to piggyback on what you were saying about our struggles being connected, in that this is an invitation for us to not participate in the ideas that we've been given about borders. So that's going to be a challenging idea, because we've always been taught to care about what happens within our borders. Keep us safe from immigrants, keep us safe from those Muslim countries, as they like to say, from Hamas, from Hezbollah, and it's all propaganda. And this is not me saying this to you as a leftist or whatever people want to call me, because there are many things, but I'm fine with it. I'm in my 40s, I don't care. People can say whatever. The reality is that if we are Christian, but even if you're not Christian, if you're not a person who is religious, that what does ground us in human rights? And borders don't do that. Borders are liars. Borders confine our moral imagination, and they have for so long. So we know they're lying to us when they say immigrants are murderers and rapists and drug dealers and all sorts of other things, right? This is what they've been telling us about people across the globe, so that we can cheer when the bombs fall, so that we can say, oh, that's right, we're safer. We're safer from the nuclear bombs or from the sleeper cells or whatever other lies they want to tell us. So the challenge for us and the invitation is for us not to think within borders anymore. That robs us of moral imagination. And so I study Christian Zionism, but specifically within Spanish-speaking communities, Christian communities. So the support for Israel, roughly, we'll say, in Christian communities that are Spanish-speaking. So I study that, And then I see Christian Zionism like in white evangelical communities, and I see it in progressive communities. And I see this is going to be challenging, so if you're mad at me, it's okay, I love you, but you can be mad at me, it's not going to bother me, is that when I speak to progressive communities, they will say, gosh, those Christian Zionists like John Hagee, right? We know John Hagee in San Antonio. We're not like that. And then they proceed to tell me why it's okay that Palestinians be bombed and what makes Israelis feel safe. And I'm like, oh, wait, I thought you didn't like John Hagee because you're telling me everything he says. I don't say it like that. It's in my biscuit, right? But this is the reality, right, is that the lies we've been told about immigrants are the lies we've been told about Palestinians, the lies that we've been told about Iranians, about people that we never met, that people don't know, to countries they've never been, but they're so sure to speak about. So it's an invitation for us to not think within borders and not to think that the U.S. is exceptional. This, I will say, is sin. It is sin to think that this nation is exceptional and to not be honest about its foundations, which history is not just in the past, history is always ongoing. And if you are unhappy with ICE, welcome to what Palestinians have been experiencing with Israel. And we have to be honest about it because there are people that we know, that we're in relationship with, that we work with, who are going to tell us different about Israel. And it means something different to them because they probably don't know either what Dr. Norman described, what Reverend Natalie described. They don't know, or they have some propagandized idea. I invite you to listen to Gabor Mate, if you are not familiar with him, who is a trauma doctor and who went to the West Bank, and he said, I was Zionist. I believe Israel was going to keep me safe as a Jew, and it kept all Jews safe. And then he went to the West Bank and did trauma work with Palestinian women who were tortured by Israel, and he said, I cried for 2 weeks because I realized that I'd been lied to my whole life. That is the truth that we need to be speaking, because what Israel is doing is what the U.S. is doing within our borders and outside our borders. So we have to tell the truth, and we have to not think within borders. It's an invitation to tell the truth. It's an invitation to not think within borders. It's an invitation not to think, I'm proud to be an American. No, I am proud to love other people, no matter where they're from. And I'm not proud of what this country is doing, and I'm not proud of its origins. And that doesn't make me a bad person. That makes me honest. That makes all of us honest. And I know there's discussions about patriotism and being different and nationalism. I invite people to reflect what they're holding on to. I have family members that are military. I understand that people have sacrificed mental health, physical health, other things. That's not in dispute. The dispute is that we are not better and more worthy than anyone else around this globe. That is a lie, and it is sinful to think so. And the more that we live into that, the more that we bring everyone into the fold. And I just want to share a couple of facts. Those are the invitations. I think that what is God or the universe is inviting all of us to not think within borders and to not think of the U.S. as exceptional. I think those are invitations, and we should accept them in this painful moment and make something else, something more beautiful. And then I think there are some facts. If you were against apartheid in South Africa, if you were against segregation in the U.S., then you should not support Israel. And you should encourage everyone you know the same. And if they are unsure, invite them and invite yourself to listen to what leaders from South Africa said when they visited Israel decades ago. And they said, oh, wow, this is worse than apartheid South Africa. And they said it decades ago. So imagine what it is now. And so those are facts. Those are facts. You can look them up. You can read about them. And I invite you to tell the story. Because if you've never been, you can bear witness. Because now you know things that you didn't before. And it's been a hidden history, right? I study this, so I have the privilege of knowing. This is my area of research. And the last thing I'll say is that I am a child of the border. So my mom is from Mexico. All of her family came from Durango. My father was white and was born in Wabash, Indiana, and that's a separate part of my journey and story. But my family's roots have always grounded me in learning from immigrants and from their immigration stories. And I grew up in El Paso seeing the border wall. And the first time I went to Palestine and I saw the wall, I didn't have the language or the knowledge or even the history yet to articulate what I was seeing, but I knew they were the same systems because the story that the art on the walls tell. So I invite you to look at that. If you've never been, look at the art. Because what it will tell you is that there is an oppressor and that there is an oppressed. There's one entity who has a lot of power, the US, and then everyone who's trying to come in, and everyone who's kicked out, and everyone who's detained and mistreated by the US. And it's the same. Israel has all the power and controls every facet of Palestinian life. And if we do not want that for us and the people we love, then we do not want it for anyone across the globe, right? And so, those are the facts. And that's what I bear witness to imperfectly and clumsily, but I hope that we can accept what we're being invited to together, even as scary as it is.
Thank you so much, Crystal. Yeah. I'm Michelle Venegas Matula. I use she and AJ pronouns, and as mentioned before, I'm part of the Texas UU Justice Ministry, and I had the amazing privilege to go and visit, be part of the Minneapolis clergy call, and it was life-changing. Like it was mentioned before, they have been at this for a long time. And the coalition work that they have built, the coalitions there, is definitely to learn from. And we, like already so many have mentioned a lot of the points, but we need to get to know each other. We need to invite people in, even if they don't have all the exact same beliefs or all the exact same values, as long as we can work towards the same goal together. And it's not easy. It's not easy, and it takes a certain amount of trust. But that is the only way that we're going to be able to push back with what's happening right now, with Christian nationalism, with what's happening with ICE. And the oppression that we're seeing, it has been going on for a long time. I know several of you have been involved for a long time too, so it's not totally new, but for some it is. For some, you haven't experienced it before. But those of us that carry marginalized identities, we have seen this for decades, for lifetimes. So it's not surprising to us. And like Crystal was saying, we're inviting you in because we need everybody right now. Whenever, whenever we were traveling back and bringing all these lessons with us, we got home late on a Friday. We were there. It was quite intense because flew out Tuesday, Wednesday, came back Friday night. We did a lot. We learned a lot. It was super cold. It was -20. People's eyelashes were frozen. But we got back. It was 1 a.m. I traveled with Carrie, and the next morning I woke up and it was the news that Alex Preddy had been murdered. And then soon after that, the video came out of the kids chanting for Libertad at Dilley. And next thing I know, I'm getting calls. It's we need to do something. We gotta organize. There's a delegation coming on Wednesday. Let's see if we can get people down there. So I never in a million years thought that I would be using what I had just learned is such an immediate response. And And we organized with over 30 organizations and brought people from all over Texas. I'm not going to talk a lot about this because I know Reverend Aaron will have more to say on this.
Say as much as you want.
But that took a lot of trusting in each other and each different group taking a part. So whatever part that you can pick up, and that you don't have to do it all. Like, that's why we need each other. We can each take whatever small part. And in that, also know that there'll be things that are unexpected, so it's so important to be nimble. We didn't expect to get tear gassed. We were following the rules, right? We were following what the law enforcement had told us, but yet they still enacted state violence. And that was a choice because they didn't have to do that. The other part that I want to talk about is that also at the end of February, organized with Pastora Diane Garcia over in San Antonio, is she had a lot of her congregants that were held at Dilley. So and this had been going on for a couple of years, so she was quite familiar with that. But one of the things that she organized was a pilgrimage, walking from Dilley all the way into San Antonio to the middle of downtown at the immigration court. And part of the delegation that went with us for that walk, it took 4 days. Part of that delegation was also Suru for Solidarity, which are Japanese Americans that were in internment camps or descendants of those that were in internment camps, which happened right here in Texas. It was like 40 miles from Dilley. And so this history has repeated. And so, we need to get it together and make it, let's not repeat this again. But it's going to take all of us to do that. And we also made, walking 26 miles a day is not accessible for everybody. But I could not walk all of that, but I was there to support. And so even though I walked some, I also was using my vehicle to provide safety. What I'd like to call was a mobile sanctuary. So when things got hot, people could come and take a break. We had snacks, we had cold water so that we could keep on going. And this was in order to bring attention to the situation, to bring more people in. And then on Saturday, the last bit, walking into San Antonio, we walked into the neighborhoods. And people were coming out. These were immigrant neighborhoods, a lot of Latina neighborhoods. And we were singing and we were bringing our signs. And, the little kids and families were coming out and just waving at us and taking photos. And we walked through a business section, and people were, the workers from the restaurants were coming out in their aprons and just cheering us on or handing us, drinks or food. And even in the beauty shop, the ladies came out with their capes on while they were in the middle of a haircut. But this is to say, we need each other because, a lot of times the immigrant community feels so alone and so invisible. And we're also following their lead, right? We're there to follow what is needed. So we're not there as saviors. We're there in solidarity because we're all interconnected. And so our liberation is connected to everybody else. And so just keeping those lessons in mind, speak out because there are those that need to know that they're cared for, that they're loved, and that we see them and we're with them. Yeah.
Thanks, Michelle. I need a breath. Does anybody else feel like a breath? The testimonies that all of you have shared are landing with me. And
I'm Reverend Aaron. Part of my ministry is music. And one of the songs that came back to me through some of you is one I'd like to sing just as a refrain now, and invite you to join me in singing as I ground my own spirit for sharing. And the words are, hold on, my dear ones, here comes the dawn. Hold on, my dear ones, here comes the dawn. Hold on, my dear ones, here comes the dawn. We'll do it one more time. Hold on, my dear ones, here comes the dawn. Thank you. So I may not sing that song exactly right. I may not sing the melody exactly like my friends who went to Minneapolis and learned it there, and you may not sing it exactly right. I don't really believe in right in almost every case. There's a few, but I believe that we take and we bring with us the songs, the gifts, the relationships, the friendships, the experiences, the things that live in our body, and we bring them to the next place and the next place in the hopes of using them for our collective liberation. And something that Michelle said really struck me about, I think we're, as a white person, as a minister, we're always wrestling with, when we show up to bear witness and to participate and be in solidarity, which is something that predates my 12 years of ministry for me. But we're wrestling with, when are the moments to be in a leadership posture, and when are the moments to be in a discipleship or a following posture, a listening posture, learning from other leaders. And sometimes there's a tapestry of that, right? Like Michelle said, we're both here. I'm here to follow the leadership of people directly impacted, and also they often can't be in the public eye on some things, and so I need to gather my strength for that. And so that song, for example, because I'm a musician, when the shooting happened here in Austin on 6th Street a few weeks ago, and the music community was grieving that violence, and I feel like the culture of violence is all connected. Like what Crystal was talking about was just hitting me. I feel so deeply that we must dismantle these American exceptionalism myths. I think is just one of the most important pieces. Like, I start every prayer in the pulpit or otherwise to a God that hears us in all languages and knows no human borders. I believe that is just so deeply important. And so when I was asked to speak at the Austin Music Awards, to a moment about what's been going on with ICE, the connections that we in Texas and Austin have to Minneapolis, the violence we were experiencing right there on the ground as a music community, I sang that song, and I talked about some of the things we're talking about here. And even in that small room afterwards, I had so many people come up to me and just whisper in my ear, "Thank you," because their family is from wherever they named their family to be from, and they can't be in the streets. And so it was very moving. I'm used to being in these like clergy spaces and church spaces and justice spaces where we're all thinking and talking about that all the time. And I think an invitation for us is to take these things into those other spaces. I wear my Abolish ICE shirt to Zumba at the YMCA, and I dance harder because I feel like I'm representing what I really, really want to see. So that's some of what is present for me, is like, what is the invitation for the things we hear tonight to weave it into how we're going to show up in other places in our lives? For me, some of the other memories that have been coming up, and I will talk about Dilley. But, early in my ministry, I went to Arizona borderlands to bear witness to Operation Streamline, and I will never forget the experience of all of those people shackled and not being spoken to in their native language, everything just like what's the word I want? Like assembly line, like this is work. We're all part of the machine, and we are that militarized capitalist machine, right? And we talked when our group of clergy that was bearing witness came outside the courthouse or whatever building it was and stood and sang and prayed outside. One of the things I remember most is how we just wanted to scream in that room. We just wanted to scream, and we felt that we couldn't. I made a conscious choice, because I could have screamed, right? But the conscious choice that it would have harmed, potentially made things worse for example, the clergy of color with me, potentially, for people in the process, potentially, but that the real responsibility, like you were talking about, is not to bleed back, but to bring back those stories. And so that was part of my ministry for a long time, was talking about that experience. The connection between what our trans kin are experiencing, what people with uteruses are experiencing. I've been part of a clergy delegation that chaplains people who are having to leave the state for abortion health care. We miss people who are both immigrants and trans Texans who have had to leave, or chosen and felt they had to leave, because of the multiple oppressions that our state is putting upon them, and grieve missing those people from our communities. With Dilley and the experience of going there, one of the messages I have for you all is, I was also grieving that I couldn't go to Minneapolis, like many of these folks. I wanted to go, and we're all trying to do what we can while being a parent, while pastoring in our own communities, doing all these things, mutual aid for our own neighbors. And that week, I just could not go. And it was very hard not to go. And I think my faith is always that we are all connected. There is no way for all of us to do everything. It would be detrimental for every one of us to show up everywhere. It would just be impossible. And so my faith was in my colleagues here who were going and what they would bring back. And then, of course, as Michelle said, immediately the opportunity to show up at home. There's always an opportunity to show up at home. And so we were in the middle of the freeze, and having, the sort of post-traumatic, with my children about charge your phones, make sure you have gas, and all of this. And Michelle texted and said, do you have the bandwidth to help organize this action in Dilley? And I did, because I had tended to my needs and my family's needs that week before. If I hadn't, I don't think I could have. One of the big takeaways from all of the witnessing experiences I've had across intersectional justice issue and areas is that the people directly impacted every time are ministering to each other every time. The people who were going to get abortions, the people who were being attacked by Capitol Guards during the trans rights sing-in a few years ago, the people when we're being tear gassed and having to come back and use our bus as a triage center. Every single time, those people are pastoring and ministering and caring and providing aid for each other. And it's just so real. So just showing up and being present to the ways we all can take care of each other stays with me every time. And people ask, in my own faith tradition, Unitarian Universalism, people ask a lot, or they bring up a lot, what about the best practices for protesting, or the nonviolent, what to do and everything like that. For me, what's important is to remember that the state should never be enacting violence on any people, whether citizens or people, papers, no papers, any of that. Like, the state's responsibility is not to enact violence on us. And so I'm not really interested, personally, in whether the people next to me are yelling at troopers or singing at troopers. We're facing, like, we have to, I'm not interested in complying with that, with a line of state troopers with shields and all of that. I want our people to get home safe, but I'm certainly not judging because people have every right to be angry. So we're having conversations about what is effective, and everyone has to ground in what their call is. And we see how powerful non-compliance can be, nonviolence can be, singing, and it's a testimony. We're showing them, whether they want to see it or not, our humanity when we sing, when we come as clergy and community. But I am absolutely not here for respectability politics about how people behave in the face of a government that, as you all were saying, is just full of lies. And I think we need to get real with ourselves about that. I'm trying to think if there's anything else I just feel very strongly about that. And what Michelle said about we are going to have to work with different people. Like, part of my stress right now is, like, on my way here, I was in a conflict with one of my neighbors about something that our kids did, but my neighbor WhatsApp group is everything, and we're all still going to take care of each other, and we're all going to figure it out. Like, we met with Kelly Hayes. I used to live in Chicago, and we met with Kelly Hayes, who's an organizer, native organizer and author in Chicago, and she was talking about, like, there's not enough of me, there's not enough of any one of us and whatever identities we have to get this done alone. We need everybody. And so if people are showing up who annoy us or who are not sharing everything, great, because we dearly need everybody. And we need to take care of ourselves. So I think that's what I got.
Thank you, Erin. And thank you for this song. Yeah. I am Reverend Carrie. I'm a Unitarian Universalist minister. And I went to Minneapolis. And as I've been listening to all of these amazing stories, my body has been talking. I'm sure your body's been talking too. And it was talking a lot those few days between saying yes. I think I said yes on a Friday, that I would go to Minneapolis, and I was on a plane on Wednesday. And I was terrified. I gave memorial instructions to my husband because I don't trust him enough to make it good. And I was scared. And it was fine. It was totally fine. We were so loved and taken care of the whole time. It was fine. It was lovely. But this, when my body is talking to me, it is reminding me to get grounded physically, to get grounded in my values, and then to get to my community. Because I think the tendency could be to just disassociate, could be to numb, because that's what really discomfort, right? Andrea Gibson said, whatever you're feeling, if it's fear, if it's anger, name it love. And that's love, what I was feeling. When I was in Minneapolis, the two lessons, the first was that there is a holy yes that we can all give, which I think has been said here quite a lot. There was an indigenous man who was speaking to us on that first day. He was on a panel, and he said, what we're doing is ordinary. It's ordinary. It's normal to help your neighbors. And I think it's scary because there is a risk to helping our neighbors when the state has decided to enact so much violence. But it's the normal thing to do, right? And so the people in Minneapolis who are so organized and so, just bought in, are just saying yes. And they probably don't know 100% what they're saying yes to. And they can't, right? The organizers that organized us, March, I didn't know what we were saying yes to. They didn't know what we were saying yes to. It was very much, the plane was being built as it was flying. And thank God it was, because we needed those lessons. And so it is hard for me as someone who wants a plan and feels like I have to be perfect at everything, but maybe we're just gonna have to say yes and accept the risk. And when we feel this discomfort, we just have to get grounded, get into our values, and get into our community.
The second thing about being there was that I think that this moment is inviting us into transformation that will bring us closer into our humanity. White supremacy, heteropatriarchy steals our humanity. I think the first violation that happens to us is to cut us off from our intuition. And I think that happens when we're little. And it's been happening ever since. So we are trying to get back to our humanity with all actions of liberation. I didn't go on Friday. A lot of ministers you probably saw went to the airport to protest, and many of them were arrested. I didn't go. I went with my beautiful friend Michelle here, and we went to a church called Dios Habla Hoy. Pastor Sergio. It was a very small church, probably half this size. And they had dedicated almost the entire church into aid for the community. This minister had been a Trump supporter. He's from Mexico. His congregation, I think he said it represents about 13 different nations. And he got to church one morning, and one of his ushers had been taken by ICE. And that lit something up in him. He talked to his administrator and said, I think we can feed, I think he said like 20 people for like 2 weeks. Let's put a form out. 10 to 20 people. So they put a form out, and by the end of the day, it was thousands of people. The first people that responded to help him were the queer community, because of course it was. He is being transformed in that process, and he is transforming the lives of so many people, because as we were there putting toilet paper into bags and shoving snacks into people's boxes in this rotating, never-ending rotation, it was everyone from every walk of life. They just said yes. And I believe that in that yes, they are invited, because I know I was, into transformation that is bringing me back to my humanity. It is, we are in a powerful time, and the alchemy is right, and it's terrifying.
Thank you all for your witnessing. My name is Patricia Bonilla. I'm a professor at Austin Seminary. I'm a United Methodist clergy from the Chicago area. And I think what is powerful to me about this space is this concept of reporting back as a talking back to power, and thinking about how this reporting back is a way of dismantling the lies that they tell us to not believe what we see, right? And so for you all to be here and to create a space where we can talk back to those lies and to witness to what we have seen, right? To share with others that what we have seen are terrible things, right? They're terrible things, but that when we come together as community, those terrible things do not stay in the dark, right? And as an educator, I think that creating spaces for us to learn from each other, to witness to that, to talk back to that, opens up an imagination for the possibilities that we have to build something different, right? To build something collective, to build something that is grounded in love. And when we say love, we need to be very clear what we mean. We need to be very clear about the unilateral violence that is inflicted, and that the love that we are responding in has to speak truth to that violence and to that power. We have to be very clear about what we are seeing. I think of the organizing that has happened in Chicago when I was there, and the need for opening up access to basic resources for life, like the fact that undocumented persons did not have access to organ transplants when needed, right? The fact that people in the detention centers were paying $40, $50 for a bottle of wine. I mean, not a bottle of wine, a bottle of water. If only. But the fact that that so many people are unaware of those basic truths and talking back to that, to those lies, I think is important. I also think that the fact that we are connected in our struggles across the globe is an opportunity for, again, opening up the possibilities of what we can do together, and the kind of collective work that is needed to make the connections across our struggles. Because again, as you mentioned, that my liberation is connected to your liberation, right? We cannot be liberated individually, so it has to be a collective effort. And we need to create opportunities for these connections, for our struggles to be connected, for us to be able to reach out and find ways to move, right? To create these opportunities so that they can materialize different futures that we are looking for our young people, especially, right? I'm thinking about the connections and the opportunities that have been so stifled for young people, the ways in which they no longer see a future, right? What is the possibility of the church in those spaces to create, to bring people together, to imagine together new ways of being in relationship with each other, right? I think there's so much wisdom here. I know that there's so much wisdom here with you all, and just finding opportunities for us to come together, to talk back and to share. I just really appreciate that opportunity. Thank you all.
Go pass it back.
I have one more thing I'd like to say. One of the other things that happened as a result of being inspired to do whatever is in front of you was to go visit people at Pearsall. And if you have an inclination to visit a detainee, I would recommend it, because it was not difficult at all. And one of the things that, I mean, there's so much, but one of the things that just stuck with me when we were talking about the dismantling of all of these systems in which we live and that we breathe, and sometimes we don't even know that we're in the midst of them. I was watching, because it took a while for the person to come for me to visit, and I was watching the employees there, and they're all in their GEO group. You know, it's a for-profit prison. And, you know, it's in the, Pearsall is a poor community. The industry is hunting, agriculture, and oil and gas. And so you can imagine there aren't a lot of jobs. And I was watching all the employees, and they're just people. They weren't anything special. They were us. And I was looking at them, and I was thinking, and they were, making plans to go to lunch, and they were talking about somebody's birthday party. And I thought, these people are probably really happy to have a job with a regular income and benefits. And I thought, We are all imprisoned in this system. But anyway, I would just, but it is easy to visit. It's actually wonderful to visit, and they make it very easy for you to go visit.
Had a good cry, thank you. Thank you all so much. I want to just honor the leadership that you have shown with your candor and your courage and your willingness to just create something kind of spontaneous with very little guidance or cues or anything. I mean, but just thank you for creating this for all of us and giving us guidance and comfort and hope and direction and inspiration by sharing everything. I had this kind of like personal realization, if I can inject myself really quickly into this, which was I'm the granddaughter of a evangelical preacher who was part of the white supremacist colonial project in Central America, and I've never really spoken publicly about like that connection to this work, but kind of what Reverend Carey was saying about this being an opportunity for us to catalyze and transform and move forward and build something different. So you all, I realized, had this personal moment where I was like, you all represent the catalyzing and the transformation of like, a history that I personally feel in my DNA. So thank you for that. What was that? Oh. Thank you. So thank you all very much. And thank you all for spending the evening with us.
Questions, or are we going? It is 7:30, so I don't.
Yeah. I don't think I have advice, but I'm so grateful for healthcare providers. So thank you for doing the best that you can for the people that don't speak your language. I felt very connected to our migrant friends here who have been in that situation when I was just like walking through the hallways saying ayuda. Like, that didn't work. That's Spanish. No, I don't have any suggestion, and I didn't have a translation app. I just really relied on the kindness of the healthcare providers. And yeah, just thank you so much for what you do. I mean, there was definitely some like, a few words that they had much more English than I had Arabic, and then I was just signing Arabic paperwork, hoping it was in the right line. But I will say, when I was having the procedure, I was awake, and I was in this ER or OR room, and the midwives were working on me. And the anesthesiologist was by my side the whole time, just because I was, losing my shit, and helping me. And I was also scared, that they would think I was an evil American and they didn't know why I was there. And he somehow communicated, it's going to be okay. And I said, like, one of the only Arabic words that I know, which is inshallah, like God willing. And he looked at me and he said, inshallah, free Palestine? And I said, yes, free Palestine! So I'm in this OR with my legs spread and like, yelling free Palestine, and I'm just super grateful for the healthcare providers that helped me regardless. So I'm sorry I don't have any wisdom though.
I'll bring you the microphone if you want. I wanted to add one thing that I meant to say, which is that this is like a source of hope that I feel, and we've talked about this a lot. In all of this work that we're doing, as hard as it is, like, we're building the world we actually want to live in. Like, the communities of people that we're getting to know and the ways that we're taking care of each other, that we are living into what we would actually like to see. So that gives me hope.
Hi there. Thank you all so much for speaking with us today. As like a Christian, in terms of seeking sort of systemic change and living out kind of what we would want to see in the world, I've been very inspired by James Tallarico's campaign and then how much success he's had in sort of raising these issues of justice and equity with people who may share our Christian faith, but also, be a little bit more divided from us politically or not be as in touch with these issues. So I was wondering kind of as like faith leaders, like who, are obviously tied to the broader Christian community, if you have any tips for us about how to start having these conversations with people who, have good hearts, but may not necessarily be like as aligned with us all the time, kind of speaking to the point about how it takes all hands.
Who wants it?
Yeah, it's hard, I'm not gonna lie. Start with the people that you're closest to that may have a differing opinion or view of the world, and stay curious, ask questions, and find out, like, where can you agree on, right? Like, you want your family to be safe and have a good future, right? Well, and then talk about how the immigrant communities or marginalized communities are also, that's what they're looking for. But yeah, just stay curious, keep asking questions, listen for those ends that you can maybe start laying down a new path for them.
Thank you. I'll be so presumptuous as to say how to address Christian friends. But I mean, so one thing that I've found in terms of Christian Zionism is that there's a lot of Christians I've met are Zionist because they think it's what they need to do right by the Jews. And I honor the fact that Christians reflect on the history of anti-Semitism in their faith tradition and are worried about how to correct it. And of course, that good impulse gets misapplied into Zionism. I think sometimes just because the good impulse is still there. I want to do what's right by the Jews, and this is what I'm being told is right by the Jews. And those are fairly easy conversations to have by pointing to groups like Jewish Voice for Peace on distinguishing between the State of Israel and Judaism. And there's a lot of resources out there to do that. So just to be gentle with people who have this impulse. Then there's the Christian Zionists that come from a place of, anti-Semitism and apocryphal sort of craziness and, just deeply anti-human impulses. And I wouldn't have those come, but there's a lot of low-hanging fruit, there in terms of sort of like being gentle with people's a desire to reach across lines that way.
I've forgotten who it was. It was Crystal. Told us about the Israeli trauma doctor that went to the West Bank. Did he write a book or any articles that we could read?
So I think if you just Google Gabor Mate, you can find a lot of YouTube, his podcasts. Thank you. I don't think he's written about this. He's written books about trauma. Because that is his area of expertise, the trauma in our physical bodies and how we feel it physiologically. So he also then addresses Jewish trauma. Gabor, Gabor, he's Hungarian in background, and his last name Mate, M-A-T-E. But you can find, so if you Google him and then maybe search Israel-Palestine, you will find him making comments and giving his testimony about that. Oh, yes, thank you. Do you want to say, sorry about that?
There's a superb documentary called Where Olive Trees Weep, and he appears on it and talks about some of his. Where the Olive Trees Weep. That's what it's called, right? Okay. But he's featured on it, and he talks extensively about his background and what brings him to this work. It's beautiful.
Another question. Not everyone can hear if we don't have you on the microphone.
How is the message of the Jewish Voice for Peace received by the local temples?
So, I mean, the Jewish community, there's another film to watch which is called Israelism, and it explains, and again, the desire to be gentle with people who have good impulses that get sort of like captured by these, horrible ideological programs. Poorly in San Antonio, but there's a huge generational split, right, within Judaism, and I think in general nationally, as sort of like as younger people have learned that that fealty to the state. Younger Jewish people have learned that fealty to the state of Israel is sort of unattractive. It's unmotivated, and it's leading them to provide ideological support for some of these horrors. So. Jewish Voice for Peace works closely, for the most part, with a lot of young Jewish people who are sort of rejecting the bill of goods that they're being sold by their elders.
So Jewish Voice for Peace also, I know you're connected with them, but has a great chapter here in Austin. So I would connect with them. And I think what our friends at synagogues here might say is that they don't represent the majority. No, they do say that they don't represent majority Jewish voices, and that's true, but that doesn't mean it's the most ethical, especially right now. So I would suggest you look at Jewish Voice for Peace National and the Austin chapter, which is often holding educational events and things like that as well.
Sorry. Do you still have a question? Oh, sorry. I'll take it.
So I'm going to just flip over to the discussion on those that have been at Dilley. And I recently read, all indications are they're shutting it down more and more and more. Less phone calls in, no phone calls out, no visits. It's just, it's locked down. And I had the honor of picking someone up from that place and talking with her, and I'm very, very, as we all are, concerned about it. Is there any action, organized action, for anything towards Dilley?
Yes.
Right now, there's a call out for attorneys, especially those that can practice out of the South District, because they're trying to file habeas petitions for everybody in there, making sure that they're all connected. So that if you know anybody that has the licensing and skills, that please, you can reach out to us, Texas Civil Rights Project and Texas Immigration Legal Center, Resource Center, thank you, are heading up that action. No, they don't. As long as they're willing to do it pro bono. Yeah, the habeas petitions are pretty easy, so yeah. That's a good question. I'd have to check and find out. Yeah. And there are more actions that we're planning of being present there, including Minneapolis, Minneapolis delegation. I'll let Reverend Aaron talk a little bit about that.
Sure. Right. Yeah. Does anybody want to speak to that part? So those questions come up on the legal side of things, and there are several really deeply involved long-term legal organizations that have been doing, this work, and so I know that they weigh every time the question comes up of lawsuits, around any of these issues that we're talking about. The folks who are on the ground legally are weighing whether a lawsuit makes the most sense, like whether the court that it would go to could do more harm than good with their decision, for example. So I don't know if anyone has specific legal expertise on that question. I just know that the Texas UU Justice Ministry, as Michelle said, we work with Texas Civil Rights Project, Raices, ILRC, is that what there's so many acronyms, but the trusted legal partners. And so as they come forward needing people to be plaintiffs in things, or needing support for their lawsuits, we are paying attention to that. But I don't have specific information. But I will give you our email for more around Dilley, because for example, today Michelle and I were on two separate organizing but related organizing calls on things that are forthcoming probably in April. TXUUJM, as in Justice Ministry, @gmail.com. And our commitment is we don't know everything and we can't do everything, but we do our best to stay connected to people on the front and help get answers where we can when those questions come up. Thank you.
Hi, thank you very much for all your testimonies. That was really intense. I'm with a group, I helped start a group called Watermelon Anti-Ice Action. And so I want to mention two actions that are coming up that are very related to what you all talked about. Watermelon Anti-Ice basically interconnects our struggles or helps highlight how they are interconnected. Basically, the Solidarity for Palestine struggle, along with resisting ICE and defending our communities here. So that's our focus, and we have two events coming up that are related very much to being a witness. The first one is tomorrow night, and it's a report back from a delegation that went to Palestine and witnessed what's going on in Palestine. They just went last month with a group called Eyewitness Palestine. So we're hosting a watch party for that at Liberation Center tomorrow evening. And then on Thursday evening, we're hosting a watch party for a training called Beyond Ice Watch. Because I think a lot of people in the community have already, hopefully a lot of us have done the Ice Watch training. And now we feel there's more to do, and we're ready to move on to doing more than just documenting and witnessing what ICE is doing. So if you follow us on Instagram, we are Watermelon Ice Watch, and those events are listed there. Thank you.
For those of you who haven't done an Ice Watch training, there will be one on Thursday night at First UU Austin, starting at 7. And my secret agenda is to get as many people in the room and we can start talking about organizing. So please come. Thursday, 7 p.m.
Thank you each again, and thank you all. And again, if you, on your way out, feel free to grab snacks. And there's also, again, 2 flyers, one with a call script that we hope everyone will help keep the pressure up for Mr. Eric Gonzalez, who suffered, again, a serious head injury, possibly a brain injury, in the detention center. And again, just an invitation to come with us to Commissioner's Court to amplify and support the message around educators and students being affected by the current climate with ICE. If you've never been to Commissioner's Court, you can just hang out and be a friendly, supportive presence, especially since there will be youth bravely speaking up. So, yeah. I guess they're sign. Do we have sign-in forms? Yeah, we should also have a sign-in sheet. I know a lot of y'all are probably already connected to our email list, but if you'd like to stay in the loop. And then there's also some more flyers about other projects that we're involved in, and you can also let us know if there's a particular project that you are interested in helping with. Thank you so much.